Okay. Good discussion. So now that you think that you understand it, let's try a different type of problem. This one's going to look like number 3 on your worksheet. Number 3 is going to say, well, if this is the point and this is the slope, can you write the equation? Write an equation in point-slope form. They give you the x, they give you the y, and then they tell you what m is. And your job will be to write what the equation is. Write an equation in point-slope form for the point 4, -7, and the slope is -1/4. So what do? We go over here. We're going to write everything the same except for what's underlined, and we have to remember it's opposite, opposite. Keep that in mind. And we have to also remember the y's are next to y's and the x's are next to x's. We go back here. Okay. The first thing I write, y. Then I need to do the opposite of whatever the y coordinate is. The opposite of the y coordinate is what? Say it out loud, please.
7.
If you said +7, that's exactly what I was looking for. Because it's a -7 for the y coordinate, I need to do the opposite of -7, which is a +7. Equals, and instead I have to replace this m. What is m equal to? Then I have a parenthesis and an x. I leave that alone. Now I have to do a minus, or do the opposite of the x coordinate. What is the opposite of the x coordinate?
-4.
You're done. Was there any work for you to do, or should? No, wait. Was there any work for you to show?
No.
There's no work for you to show. On this type of problem, you will have very to little no work. You'll have answers. And there will either be right answers or wrong answers. So there we go. What we have to do next. Write an equation in point-slope form. That's what we're going to do. The harder. Let's do something harder now. What happens if you have... Oh, I wanted to change this one. Hold on. Which one did I want to go to? I want to do number 18 instead. Number 18. And I'm going to change this to -3, -2. And 2, 3. Ray, I'm not going to be able to sign that just right now because I'm teaching. I should be good to go in about 15, 20 minutes. 15, 20 minutes? Sound good?
Wait,
okay.
Why are you doing the robotics?
Shh.
Okay. So here's what we're going to have to do. I'm going to say write an equation in point-slope form, but instead of me giving you a slope and a point, I just give you 2 points. So you're going to have to figure out what the slope is. That's the step number 1. Let me put over here to step number 1. You're going to need to find the slope. If you forget how to find the slope, I'll write down the formula for you. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The y's over the x's. The rise over the run. First step we have to do is find the slope. The second step that we're going to have to do is to choose one point and replace x1, y1, and m in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And that's our directions. Let me let you write that down. Find the slope. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the second thing, choose one point and replace x1, y1, and m in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And if you want to, you can underline this thing and this thing and this thing because that's what you're replacing. So there's only one extra step. See how in this up here, you had the point and you had the slope, you could figure it out? Well, we have a point, but we don't have the slope. So let's find the slope first. How are we going to do it? We're going to go and do m equals. Which one do you want to do? Do you want to do which y first? 3 minus negative 2?
Yes.
Or do you want to do negative 2 minus 3?
3 minus negative 2.
Okay, when you do 3, take away. Do not forget you're subtracting a negative 2. I want you to write down subtracting a negative 2. When you have two negatives next to each other, what it means is you're doing the opposite of a negative. You are multiplying a negative times a negative. So you will need to change those signs. And if I did 3 minus negative 2, I went right minus left, I have to do the same for the x's. Y is on top, x is on bottom. 2 minus a negative 3. Don't forget, you're subtracting that negative. That's the most common mistake, by the way. If you want to know what a common mistake is, students, when they're subtracting, they think, oh, there's a negative there, and they only write down one negative when there's two. The double negative lets you know you're not really subtracting anymore. You're now adding a positive. Okay, 3 plus 2 is? Over 2 plus 3? 5 over 5 means the slope is equal to?
1.
Perfect. We are halfway. We now know what m is. We have found the slope. And then this next point says choose one point, which means do you want to use the negative 3 and the negative 2, or do you want to use the positive 2 and the positive 3? So you pick which one. You have this point or this point. It doesn't matter to me if you use this point or this point. You choose one of them. Let's say you choose this one. Now you have your m and your slope, and it becomes just like the problem you had before. So let's write it out. Y, don't forget opposite. Y minus y1. Which one is the y coordinate? What am I going to put down?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. Good job. Equals. Do I have to write the 1? I'm going to put 1 like this. A scholar would not write the 1. But if you want to write down the 1, you can. That's how come I made it dotted, because it's like an invisible 1. 1 times anything is itself. Parenthesis. X,
Minus 2.
opposite of positive 2 is minus 2. Does that mean I actually have to do parentheses here, Mr. Promo? No. A scholar would just have y minus 3 equals x minus 2, and that's in point slope formula. Here's your answer. It's in point slope form. And so if you wanted to, I'm just saying, if you go and you multiply this through and then you move the 3, you can turn this from point slope form into slope intercept form if you wanted to. But that's going to come at a later time. I think there's one question on this worksheet that's going to ask you about it, and you can answer it, but I'm not really worried about it until we get to the 3.5b worksheet. I think that's when we're going to learn it. Do I have another? Oh, yeah, okay. So here's my last example for you. Yes, my last example. What about a graph? From a graph. Write in point slope form from a graph. Right? In point slope form. And let's say this is like number 14. Let's say you had 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2. 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2, x-axis, y-axis. A dot. Another dot. And another dot. So if you have a graph, this is the point 2, 2. This is the point 0, 1. This is the point negative 2, 0. In case you needed to see it. Right in point slope form. So for point slope form, you have to have a point. We have this point, we have this point, we have this point. But you need a slope. So I think the first thing is very similar to what we did over here. What's the slope of this particular graph? Do you know what the slope is? If you do, tell the person you're sitting next to right now.
2. Yeah.
The slope is not 2.
1 over 2.
Wait, 1 over 2, yeah. 1 over 2.
The slope is 1 over 2. I hope you know why. This is the rise over the run. So I'm going up 1 and over 2. Up 1 over 2. That's what the slope is. If you have a slope, all you have to do now is pick a point. Some of you will not know which point is, I would not recommend this one or this one, because a lot of you get confused which one is your X and your Y. There are some of you in here who I would say go for it. And there's some of you I would say just pick the easiest one, the one that has an X and a Y that are the same. It's easier if we use 2, 2 than any other point that's here. For those of you who don't know, this is the point 0, 1, not 1, 0. Some people get that confused. This is negative 2, 0. But I would just pick the one that's right here. This point. We have a point. Choose one point and replace in the formula. Why? Let's use that point. What's the opposite of the Y?
Negative 2.
Good. Equals. Instead of m, I need to write down what the slope is. The slope is
1 over 2.
parenthesis x. Do the opposite of your x coordinate, which is?
Negative 2.
And that is your answer.
Yay.
The only other thing that I should mention is that you can have multiple answers. I would accept this as an answer. If you pick this point, your answer would have looked like this. This is 0, 1. So it would be minus 1 equals 1/2 x minus 0. Do I have to write minus 0? No, you could just write x. I would accept it. And I would also accept this point. Y minus 0 equals 1/2 x plus 2. So for me as the math teacher, I have to have 3 answers on my answer key. But for you, you only have to pick one. Just know that when I grade you, I have 3 answers that I accept. This one, or this one. They're the same graph. Don't freak out by it. Christina. The negative 2. This one? Do you remember how this point right here is the point 2, 2? I go to the right 2 and up 2. Isn't that point 2, 2? Now remember what the formula says. The formula says opposite, opposite. So I have to do the opposite of positive 2, which is negative 2. Opposite of positive 2, negative 2. That's why. It's just the opposite. Lastly, on your worksheet, you have a table. You should also be able to look at a table, and it doesn't matter if this is a point, this is a point, this is a point. I can find the slope and then I can pick any point I want to write it in point slope form. So keep in mind, it's the same thing, just in table format. All right?